Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Amber here. So this video is going to be a little bit of a departure from my normal home tours and what's going on in DFW and what it's like living here. Because I want to just address some things I'm hearing from folks that are just really concerned about what's happening in the housing market, the job market, are we in a recession, all the things. And so I'm just going to give you my take on what I'm seeing, because I think what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I'm experiencing myself personally versus what they're saying in the news seems to be vastly different. So with that, I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the distressed market. And so here in Texas, we're experiencing something very unique in that Texas is huge and we have a lot of land. And so because of that, we have the ability to build new homes more so than maybe other states or states like California, that's also a large state, but don't have the land space anymore to be able to build. So their building policy tends to be very restricted. Permits take a really long time to get approved. And here in Texas, that is not the case. So we're able to build much faster here. And so what that means is we're entering an interesting market in that the spring market, which right now, as we're recording of this video, we are towards the beginning of May. So we're entering the end of the spring market, beginning of the summer market, which are typically for real estate, the busiest times of the year. And I will tell you that we're not seeing the same amount of activity. Now, what I'm going to share with you, this is going to be very regional. So in the area that you're in, you may be in a multiple offer situation and overbids and all that happening. But here in the North Dallas area, not seeing that as much, right? Not to say it's not happening, but it's not happening nowhere near what it was how it was happening before. So what that means is now as a home buyer and a home seller, how that impacts you is that you now as a home buyer puts you in a situation where potentially you have more inventory to pick from, right? Because you've got resale homes and you've got builders who have properties that have not been able to move them. So you're seeing a lot more incentives. Those incentives are increasing. So maybe it's something where their credits are getting a little bit higher, or in one of my former videos, I talked about how the builder is actually allowing for some negotiation in price, which was not happening at all before. So we're definitely in a situation where we're seeing more inventory hit the market. At the same time, we're seeing more foreclosure inventory hit the market. I was just at so once a month here in Texas, and I think this is probably very similar to a lot of other states. So once a month at the county courthouse, they will auction off properties. And so went to an auction yesterday, and originally slated to have about 9 properties to go up for sale. They wound up clearing 2 of those, meaning 2 got approved to be auctioned that day. Those properties were snapped up by the investors that were there. And so as we look at the amount of properties that are starting to go into that distressed market where they're behind on their payments, and or hitting auction. If you get auction, it's not like you miss a payment or 2 and then it goes up for auction. There's a long process that happens. And so the fact that these properties made it all the way to auction is letting you know that they're because usually the bank is going to try to work with them. At any rate, we're seeing an increase overall in folks that are behind on their payment. I'm hearing statistics like 10% of FHA buyers are in some way behind on their payment. That could be 1 payment behind, that could be 3 payments behind. But at any rate, people are struggling. And so what folks are talking about in terms of, oh, the job market is not bad, we've created jobs. Great, you've created jobs. What kind of jobs? Were those job openings filled? Because what I'm hearing is a lot of folks are looking for employment and having a really difficult time finding it. So I'm going to show you just to back up what I'm saying in terms of overall distressed properties nationwide, but specifically here in Texas, because we do have the ability to build, because you've got new construction as well as resale hitting the market, more inventory. And if folks are starting to see softening, which in certain areas we are starting to see that because there is so much inventory, not enough buyers because folks can't qualify at 7.5% interest rate. It's just not going to work for them. So they're kind of sitting on the sidelines. So now those properties are sitting in the market. And as the longer they sit, the lower the price goes, right? You start seeing price decreases. And so you're seeing a good percentage, somewhere around 30% in certain areas of properties will take a price decrease before they actually get sold. And so with that, let me just show you so you know I'm not talking. Okay, so this article is by, I don't know if it's pronounced Adam or Atom. At any rate, they provide real estate data. And so what they've done is they've taken a look and they've seen that overall, this is all states, not just Texas, overall, foreclosure activity has increased in Q1 in 2024. And so what I want to point out here is the metros that are seeing this. So you're seeing the major metros of population of 200,000 or more have the greatest numbers of foreclosures, which would make sense, right? Because you have the greatest population, more housing there. And so New York has 4,404 foreclosure starts, Houston, Texas, 2,900, Chicago, 2,800, Los Angeles, 2,300, Miami, 2,300. And then the largest foreclosure rates, interestingly enough, was Delaware, New Jersey, and South Carolina. So you're seeing like basically for Delaware, for example, you're seeing 1 out of 894 houses has a foreclosure filing. In New Jersey, it's 1 out of 919. South Carolina, 1 out of 929. And then in Nevada, 1 out of 961. And in Florida, 1 out of 973. That's not good news, folks. Like that's problematic because as you're seeing more of these filings happening, what's going to also happen. So I just mentioned, at least here in Texas, we've got increase in inventory, which we had needed because we were at a shortage. But it matters the way that inventory hits the market. So if you have just regular folks wanting to sell a home that had maybe delayed and now they're wanting to take advantage of the higher summer market, which is typically spring, summer, starts March to July. That's typically the best time to sell a house. That's when you have the most buyers in the market. So if they're wanting to take advantage of that, and then on top of that, you've got builders that are releasing lots and releasing inventory. And then on top of that, you've now got these foreclosures starting to hit the market. Do you see where I'm going? Where you've got this tsunami of real estate hitting the market, but you've got incredibly high interest rates that people cannot absorb this time. It just makes it really difficult. So then those properties wind up just sitting. It's not like, sure, you have investors that are going to snap up. Like I said, at the auction, there was probably about 60, 70 investors there, but not all of them were bidding. And so you don't have, what I foresee happening is you're not going to have enough investors or people in the market to snap up all that inventory. So it's going to wind up sitting. And like I said earlier, the longer a property sits, the more those prices come down. So this is a big issue that I think folks are not talking about. Some folks are, but I think there's this euphoria of, property always goes up forever and ever and ever, which is just not the case. And I think we're about to enter a season where we're seeing that properties are going to start coming down. So at the end of this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can do to prepare for that. So if you're a buyer, if you're a seller, and you're thinking about, okay, what does this mean for me if we are starting to see more foreclosures hit the market? You just don't want to be behind the 8 ball. You don't want to be surprised when things are happening. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can do so that way you can be prepared and make sure you're in the best possible position to either ride it out if you have no interest in purchasing a home or selling a home, or if you are one of those folks that are interested in purchasing or selling, that you know how to navigate what's going to be a very different market. So distressed properties, definitely on the increase, something to keep a close eye on. So over the last probably 2 years or so, there's been a lot of talk of recession, right? Are we in a recession? Are we past the recession? Are we about to go into a recession? What is a recession? And so I'm gonna just real quick talk about what is recession, because I think perspective is different. There's one thing of how big business sees it, and one thing about how Main Street sees it, you and I, and what we're feeling on a day-to-day basis when we're trying to just go about the business of living our lives. So I'm going to show you a little bit about just the quick definition of what a recession is, give my hot take on it. Okay, so per Investopedia, which is not a peer-reviewed source. However, this will give you a broad stroke of what technically the definition of what a recession is. So recession is a significant, persistent, and widespread contraction in economic activity. Typically, we've had recessions that have become shorter and less frequent over the last recent decades. typically preceded, this is what to pay close attention to, typically preceded by monetary and fiscal tightening and often prompt a reversal of those policies. COVID-19 was the shortest on record, and the longest one was the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009, which is when we had that huge subprime bubble. And so, again, want to pay special attention to this piece here, typically preceded by monetary and fiscal tightening and often prompt a reversal of those property policies. And so by that, I think what we're seeing is that we've definitely been in over at least the last 18 months-ish, been in a situation where we've been in tight fiscal policy. And so if that be the case, if this definition is true, I would say what we're feeling here on Main Street is different than what we're seeing here on Wall Street per se, where it is feeling much tighter than it was. We were seeing with the inflation, the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, all of those things are going up. And so folks are really pondering, what can I afford to purchase? I have a friend who makes very, very good money, and she was standing in the aisle in the grocery store looking at olive oil, trying to just determine whether or not she can afford to buy it, because the olive oil was like $14. Like $14 for olive oil. Like, how bad do you need that, right? So you start making these adjustments, and these are people that are making six figures or mid six figures, and maybe not mid, low six figures, say low six figures, where the fact that you have to budget whether or not you can buy some staple things really should tell you, like, to me, from a Main Street standpoint, definitely feels like we're already in recession. I think in the last one, it might have been not the COVID-19 recession, but the one right before that. I think they were saying that actually they had forecasted we actually hit recession before they said it. So there's oftentimes, based on that information, where we're actually in recession. And then as they look back on history, they're, oh, actually we entered recession earlier than we thought. I think we might be in one of those times where they're telling us, oh, we're not quite in recession yet, or we've missed recession, oh, we're in for a soft landing, oh, we're in for a hard landing. There's all this information all over, but I think none of that matters. It's how is it impacting your household? And I think for a lot of folks, when you're making a decision whether or not you can buy the olive oil or not, that to me is letting us know we're absolutely feeling the tightness of that economic policy restrictions, and it is making an everyday impact on our households. And so again, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to kind of navigate what this means, but I do think what this is doing is it's creating an kind of this, I don't know, this kind of perfect storm where we're going to be in a situation where we're having a ton of inventory, where at a time when people are tightening their belts, tightening those budgets, and also creating kind of a lack of demand in the real estate market, which again means longer days on the market. Great news if you're in a position to be able to purchase, because I think you're going to be able to negotiate some fantastic deals on real estate in the coming months. But for those of us that are not in that market, it means that, or those of us that are selling, it means that you need to be prepared for having your property on the market for a longer period of time. That's just going to kind of be, again, it's really going to depend on where you live. I'm saying here in the North Dallas area, where we're starting to see a lot more inventory hit the market, you should be prepared to have your property on the market a little bit longer. That may take a little bit longer to sell. The other thing that we're seeing that honestly impacts housing and just available funds for purchasing, not just purchasing home, but just purchasing goods and services, is the use of credit card debt. So there's an article, and I'll show you this one as well. There's an article about how credit card debt in America has gone up significantly. Average credit card debt for Americans is on the rise. Now, this original article was posted in 2023. It was just updated in April 30th of this year. But you can see average credit card debt is on the rise. And what I really wanted to show you on this is this chart, which is average credit card debt by age. So it's for 2023, again, just updated about a couple of weeks ago. But you see how when you get to 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000, 1100, 1200, 1300, 1400, 1500, 1600, 1700, 1800, 1900, 2000, 2100, 2200, 2300, 2400, 2500, 2600, 2700, 2800, 2900, 3000, 4000, 5000, 6000, 7000, 8000, 9000, 100,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000, and above, the debt goes up significantly. So folks between the ages of 40 and 64 have the largest amount of debt. And as we get into folks that are nearing that upper range, you're seeing that those are also the same folks that are typically on a fixed income. They have a retirement that they're living off of and things like that. So we're seeing that the inflation is really impacting these folks, and they're using credit in many cases, not just that group, but I think overall folks are bolstering themselves up a bit by using credit cards to be able to help just finance daily life. This is not talking about, oh, I'm going on vacation to Fiji somewhere. No, this is just, I'm buying groceries, and instead of using my normal paycheck, which has dwindled significantly, I'm going to use my credit card to get what I need. And again, I'm standing in the aisle trying to decide whether or not I get olive oil, probably putting $14 olive oil back. So this is just letting you know, I think too, that what we're seeing is folks are really trying to stretch the funds that they do have access to. And the way that they're doing that is by credit cards, which could be really a sticky situation long term when we're in a market where the interest rates are high. That interest rates being high doesn't just impact housing; it's also going to impact the rates on your credit card. So you're just constantly like in the state of kind of digging a hole, a financial hole, which could be really painful if it gets out of hand. And so that's another thing that I think that is really impacting folks' ability to purchase homes at this point in time, because that's not priority. If you are in a situation where you're trying to decide what groceries you can purchase, the last thing you're worried about is purchasing a $400,000 home. Unemployment. So let's talk a little bit about unemployment. So they're saying statistically that our numbers are still really good, and that we're like in the 3%, something like that, which is pretty low. But again, I would love to see the data a little bit on what are they calling gainful employment, because folks, there has been a lot of layoffs, and it's not just localized to certain industries, not just tech. There's a number of industries that are experiencing that. So let me show you this if you're not aware. I'm going to show you two pieces of information to take a look at and just kind of keep your eye on, and hopefully you don't see your company on this list. So the first one, let me share my screen here. The first one is, I don't know how you say this, statistic. Anyway, it lets you know. Somebody can let me know how you say it. Anyway, it lets you know which industries are experiencing the most highest unemployment rate, right? So right now it's leisure and hospitality. Why? Well, because folks are like just daily living, life is life, and daily living has been a bit of a struggle. So for a lot of folks, and so you're going to cut back on how much travel, how much leisure activity that you do. So it makes sense that the leisure and hospitality would take the biggest hit, because if you don't have people that are utilizing these services or utilizing these resources, you don't need to fully staff these different businesses. And so that's interesting to see that you see leisure and hospitality, and you've got agriculture and private wage salary workers, and you've got construction, information, transportation, utilities, professional and business services, and on down. And so it tends to be those things that are not your staple things, food, housing, gas, like those types of things. Everything else takes a back seat, right? One of the things that you could also do if you're hearing rumblings in your job place, or you're concerned about like, are layoffs going to happen, there is a great website that I highly recommend that you bookmark, and that is this one here, and it's called warrentracker.com. So warrentracker.com will let you know what companies are preparing for layoffs. And so you can see here that 6.7 million employees were laid off from Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and 33,960 other companies from, this is 1998 to 2004. So that's a big gap there. But what I want you to pay more attention to is kind of what layoffs are coming up. So if you know anybody working for Assurance IQ, Southside Communities, Combat Media, Sage Automotive Interiors, Wealth Path LLC. Do you see what the range is for these layoffs? So these ones haven't even happened yet. They're due to happen July 3rd. Well, happy 4th of July to these folks. So July 3rd for these top three, and they're going to be laying off between 100 and 250 people. So that's 100 and 250 families that have maybe had mortgages, rent to pay, things like that, that are going to have a challenging time doing that in the near term because of these upcoming layoffs. And so, again, that just rolls over into everything that's happening with the housing market, and how I think we're about to enter a market that's going to be where you're going to see a lot more distressed properties. You're going to see a lot more overall inventory. You're going to be able to negotiate a little easier because property is going to be sitting on the market for longer. So from a buyer standpoint, those three things are great. From a seller standpoint, not ideal, which means that if you are going to sell or in a position where you do need to sell in this current climate, you do want to make sure that you are priced well. That couple things, that your property shows really well, that you are priced well, and I would even venture to say that you're priced slightly below market, so that you can create that frenzy that you need to be able to get that property sold quickly, because you're going to have a lot more competition in the market. And the other thing is you need to be prepared for, okay, where are you going next, right? So depending on what your plans are for moving, are you going to be moving to another state? Are you staying in the area? You need to really kind of strategize that plan. So just something to be mindful of as you're planning to navigate this next market. What I want to talk about next is just kind of how do you prepare for, so we've talked about distressed properties, we've talked about are we in a recession or not? We've talked about unemployment, and and we've talked about kind of credit card debt and how that's impacting folks financially. And so some of the things that I think that you can do to help bolster your financial position as we enter what's going to be a pretty challenging, I would say pretty challenging real estate market, is a couple things. So it's a couple things that you can do to kind of help shore up your, not only your financial situation, but your job situation. So one is, first of all, don't panic, right? We're hearing a lot of crazy news. We're hearing wars and things like that. I intentionally don't watch the news anymore. And so I pop in and pop out. What's going on? Okay, I got a good gist of what's happening, and then I'm out, because it's just so depressing. And what you feed yourself, you will become. And so I'm very intentional about what I feed myself. You don't want to be ignorant of what's happening in the world. And so what I would say is just don't panic, and also be mindful of what you're feeding yourself. Don't sit there and ingest a bunch of negative news, because it's going to impact your outlook. And while we are entering a difficult season economically, it doesn't mean that there's despair, right? And so just be mindful of that. Don't panic, but I would say make a plan. So part of that plan in being prepared for a bit of a challenging maybe market ahead is make sure, to the best of your ability, that you keep your credit in good shape. If your credit's not in good shape, I would definitely recommend working with a professional. So a credit repair company, I'm going to link one who's a friend of mine actually that has a credit repair. She's had this credit repair company for 20 years and helps tons of people. And so even whether your credit, it would be classified as poor credit, or maybe a pretty good credit or fair credit, I would still employ the services of a credit repair professional that can help you make sure that you have your credit in tip-top shape. Because as the market tightens in terms of lending, it's going to require that. And so you don't want to be in a position where maybe you do need to get a loan or a credit card or a HELOC or whatever you need to do, and you need access to credit in this next 18 months. You want to make sure that you put yourself in the best possible position. So even if you have technically good credit, fair credit, get that thing as close to 800 as you possibly can. And one of the ways that you can do that is work with a professional that can help you kind of navigate that and make sure that you're in the best possible position. Should something happen, job loss, that kind of thing, where you're going to need to tap into credit, that you're already prepared for it, and that's not going to be a blocker. Here's another thing that I would recommend that you do if you're concerned about job loss, right? A lot of folks are concerned about that, and rightfully so, because we're seeing it, like I just said, widespread. So another thing that you can do about how to shore yourself up on job loss, from job loss, this is you should always be boss hunting. What I mean by boss hunting, there's a job, I guess he's a job consultant. Anyway, his name is Andrew Lasavita. I'm going to link his channel as well because he does an excellent job of how do you bring yourself to market as an employee. And so boss hunting is basically to always be, even if you're happy at your job, the best time to look for a job is when you don't need one. And so if there is any level of concern around your employment and the stability of that, now would be a great time to start looking, just because it is taking longer for folks to find a job, and it's more pressure to be looking when you don't actually, or when you've already lost your job. So if you have started to see like some, you're reading the tea leaves at work and you're like, things are looking a little shaky, go ahead and dust that resume off. Like I said, check out Andrew Lasavita's videos. He does a great job of letting you know how to boss up, which is essentially not just applying to jobs, but it's about finding out, okay, based on your industry, who potentially would be your boss in that area, and reaching out directly to that person via email or even calling them, and just introducing yourself. It may sound uncomfortable, funny to do, but I'm telling you, I've done it before in my former life, and it absolutely works. So I'll include a direct link to one of his boss hunting videos. But again, the time to look for a job is when you don't need one. You're not under the pressure of, I got to find something, I'll just take anything. And so if that is a concern, this is the time to put your head on swivel. Do your job, do what you need to do, execute in the best possible way, but also kind of keep your head on swivel on what else could be out there. Another thing around that, I would say, is make sure that your network is warm. So if your LinkedIn hasn't been updated in a while, you may want to go ahead and update that LinkedIn. If you haven't reached out to former colleagues or anything in a while and checked on them, this would be a good time to do that when you don't need a job. So oftentimes you see like, hey, I was impacted by XYZ's layoff. Anybody knows anything, yada, 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 right? We see those all the time in LinkedIn, but the time to really make sure that you're keeping in contact with your network is not when you absolutely need it, where you're under this level of pressure. That's not ideal. So if it's been a while, that you've reached out to past colleagues or anybody in your network, check on them. This is a good time to be able to do that, just so that way, if there are opportunities that they may know about, because in that check-in, you might uncover some opportunities that you would otherwise have not known about had you not taken some time to genuinely check on, folks that you've worked with in the past. So now is a really good time to make sure everything's updated on your resume. Check out the video about how to boss hunt. Keep your head on swivel, because again, these things happen a lot of times and folks are caught flat-footed where they didn't see it coming. And so if you're always kind of in a position where you're always kind of looking lightly, then it makes things like that, when they do happen, it makes it less it's just less trauma, because you've already kind of started the process. You've always kind of kept your network warm, your resume's updated, your LinkedIn's updated, you're checked in, dialed in with your network and your community. If you're also concerned about losing your job, the other thing that I would suggest doing, look for a side hustle. This is a side hustle society. And rightfully so, right? Because we're seeing all these layoffs and things like that. So the days of like work for one company for 30 years and they take care of you and they give you a pension and give you a gold watch, that is over, and we're not getting it back. And so on average, most folks stay at a job for about 3 years and then they're off to the next. So whether it's off to the next because they got laid off, or off to the next because they found another opportunity, it's common to not be at a job for 30 years. So with that, you just want to make sure that you're diversifying. You just want to make sure that you're diversifying your income streams. So of course you've got your job as your primary, but having that side hustle in case something goes on, you don't feel, you're trying to avoid feeling flat-footed, where something happens, it smacks you in the face, and now you're just scrambling on what to do and you're freaked out. That is the worst time to make life-altering decisions, is when you're freaked out and you're doing it from a place of just being responsive versus being intentional about what the next step is. And so one of the ways that you can kind of show yourself up in doing that is have a side hustle. So if there's hobbies or if there's things that you're interested in, to explore, this would be good to start those things up, right? While you have income flowing through where you can use part of that income to help fund getting your side hustle up and going, right? The other thing you can do if you're concerned about job loss is, they're saying they're adding a lot of jobs. A lot of those are part-time jobs. And so if that's a space where you have capacity to be able to maybe take on something evenings, weekends, or something that's going to work around your schedule, where you can add that, and it's not a I have to, it's a like, hey, I'm just doing this because maybe I have a genuine interest in this field and I want to just kind of put my toe in the water and check it out. So one of the ways to do that is do it on a part-time basis. And so that's another way to just kind of shore up what's going on with your financial situation. So if something does happen, again, you're not completely off guard. The other thing that I think you can do in order to kind of set yourself up for success in over the next 18 months is where you can pay down that debt. Some of the ways that you can do it, if you have things around the house, it's time to have a community garage sale. Sell some things, like, right? If things are a little bit tight right now, look around and see if there are things or resources that you don't use anymore, items you don't need anymore that you can sell. Facebook Marketplace is a great place to do that. Sometimes you might be taking your life in your hands, but I digress. I'm kidding. But there are different resources and different ways to sell things. So that's one of the things you can do if you need a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit more room in the budget. Look around and see if there's some things that you can liquidate that you no longer need, no longer serving you. Get rid of them, and so that we can kind of pay down that debt again. Because all you're trying to do is create some margin for yourself, so that if your budget's feeling tight, that you create some wiggle room. So whether that's a side hustle, selling some things, or taking on a part-time job, that you have some room. So that way there's just to lend a little bit more to peace of mind. So things are feeling a little unstable, just a handful of ways of adding some additional stability to your financial future. The last thing I'm going to say about all of this is that I think as you navigate, like, what makes this, if any of this was helpful for you, what makes the most sense for you is figure out what professional do I need to help me with this? And I definitely recommend getting some help with this. So if it's something where you're in a situation where you need help with, okay, I know I need to work on my credit, I need help there, please, again, I would highly recommend reaching out to my colleagues that has the company. Like I said, I'll put the link in the video description. And just a consultation is free. Just get some information around what can you do to increase that credit score. So in the event that you need to tap into that, tap into credit, you're in a good position to do that. If you're struggling real estate wise, we talked about distressed properties, and a lot of times folks get in a situation and they kind of clam up and they don't reach out for help. So if you do need help with that and need navigation on what are my options, I'm behind on my payment, can I do a loan modification? Can I do a short sale? Can I sell it? Like, what are my options? Talk with a real estate professional. That's what their job is. And talk to the right person. And the goal is not to always just tell you to sell your home. The goal is, okay, here's our options. We have these 3 options. What makes the most sense for what you want to do, right? And so I think it's important to make sure that you get help, because a lot of times folks don't know that you have the ability to do things. If you are behind, like I would say, please talk to your lender. A lot of times you'll be surprised at what they can do. And so don't just quietly not do anything and hope it just goes away. That for sure is not the solution. So if you're not sure what to do, talk to a real estate professional, whether that's your lender directly or another real estate professional that can kind of help you navigate, okay, here's your 4 different options. Which one do you want to explore? Because I know sometimes it could be just incredibly stressful, and it's difficult when you're under that level of stress to really see what your options are. And so you need a neutral kind of third party to come and say, okay, based on where you're at, these are the 3 things that you can do. Which one do you want to explore, right? So get some help in that space if you are behind on your mortgage, or starting to feel like you might become behind, like a recent job loss. Get in front of it. You don't want to be reactive when it comes to your mortgage and putting a roof over your head, right? So make sure that you're communicating with your lender or communicating with a professional that can help you. And then lastly, if it's a job related, like I said, having a job coach is excellent. Like I said, Andrew Lasavita, he's got hundreds of videos on how to boss hunt, how to set up your resume, how to do LinkedIn, all the things. And so I would definitely recommend, if you can't move forward with having him to actually coach you, I would highly recommend going through his channel. There's a lot, he posts a lot of free content. So if it's been a long time since you have looked for a job, you're like, I don't even know how to do this anymore, get some help. Don't just try to figure it out on your own. Definitely don't just sit there and send out resumes through the applicant tracking system, which is basically when you fill out an application online, it's going through a system, and most likely the AI is determining for you whether or not an actual human ever actually sees your resume. Don't do that. That doesn't, not to say it doesn't work, but you hear stories of people who sent out 1,000 resumes and gotten that. Well, that's because machines don't hire people, people hire people. You need to be face to face with someone. And so being able to figure out, how do I get in touch with the decision maker? How do I get in touch with the person who potentially would be my boss? That's all the things that he talks about on his channel. So I'm no expert in that, but I can say that in a former life, I have absolutely benefited from his job coaching. And so I highly recommend if that's a space that you need help in. But again, my goal here is just to kind of help you understand what is happening, what is likely to happen, and help you to navigate what could be a kind of challenging market, but it doesn't have to be. When you see the signs, pay attention to them. And so I'm seeing the signs, and I thought, okay, let me make a video just so folks can kind of get a little bit of insight on how to kind of prepare for the next 18 months. I don't think it's going to be Jubilee. I don't think, I just don't see it happening. I think we're gonna see a lot of distress, and so for some folks that's going to be a good thing, for other folks not so much. But the main thing is to make sure that you are taken care of. So hopefully this information has been helpful to you. If I can be of any help, resource, if you have questions about any of the resources, like I said, look down in the description for this video. I'll put all the links that I mentioned before of those resources. And like I said, if I can be of any service to you, please reach out. That's what I'm here for. That's what I created this channel to do, is be a resource to folks. So even if you don't know me, that you could still benefit for some of my little insight. So anyway, that's it for this video. I will see you next week.